I'm Blythe Kaufman, and welcome to Our Lady's Victory Garden. Well, we're very excited today because we had an interesting discovery in the garden, and that is that our mushrooms are here that we inoculated over a year ago. My daughter was outside and happened to discover that a bunch of these pieces of a trunk that were being taken down, we moved over here. Were not growing out of the garden, or out of the ground rather. We moved them here, and we inoculated them with plugs by drilling a hole and then placing the plug inside along the sides and then also on the top of the wood, and sealed the wood with a wax that was painted on. And we let those, and we used this, you can see some of the hosing here. We ended up putting some drip irrigation just to keep them moist, not that it was absolutely needed, but this area gets a fair amount of sun, and so we've tried to allow some of this forsythia to grow over it, and we've actually put some branches on it just to create some more shade for them so they don't dry out. And it's an exciting thing. We can start looking forward to a real robust spring harvest of mushrooms. I wanted to show you another piece of information about growing mushrooms. What happened here is the bark has peeled away just with the elements and the sun, and so what it's done is it's revealed here the process of putting in those plugs. If you can see, I'm going to turn a little bit here. I don't know if you can see, but some of these areas you can see some of the plugs sticking out, and also here you can see the holes that we drilled into the log, and we placed in some of these different plugs of shiitake mushrooms. So we're here in this interesting space between two sets of trees. They created almost like an archway, but it's a shaded archway. And so when we had a tree taken down in our back of our yard, what we did was we cut the wood up into pieces that are about 3 feet tall, and we lined them along this space that is shaded, and we inoculated them with mushroom spores. And we also added some drip irrigation along here, but I'm just gonna take us down here for a little bit of a tour. It's a little tight for walking, but one can come over here. And we have over here a nice shiitake mushroom that's growing. And here's another one. And this is the first of our harvest so far of the mushrooms. But what this tells us is that it's been just about over a year. I don't know if you can see this in the wood, but there's all these little holes that we drilled in and put the plugs of the mushrooms. And out of those plugs, the mushrooms can grow. The bark is almost like this, like a skin that protects the wood. And so only things that penetrate the bark have access to the wood. So by drilling the holes in and inoculating the wood, you can selectively put in what you want to grow. But then you have to take a little bit of wax, hot wax, and seal those holes that have a plug in them, and any areas that have been cut on the wood. So no additional varieties of non-edible mushrooms start to grow. But this is very exciting that we're here in February, and there are mushrooms here, and we started picking them, and they're edible. This is one of the mushrooms that we were looking at beside the shed that was growing on maple wood. It was growing in a cluster, and it's always important to look at the underside of the mushroom as well, because it gives you a lot of information. So we cut this mushroom right in the stem with a knife. And one of the first things you notice is, if you're looking at, are the gills. The gills here are decurrent, which means that they run all the way up onto the stem. The other thing about these gills is that as they extend out, they fork, meaning that one gill can split into two. And that feature you see all the way around the edge of this mushroom. The size of this mushroom is about 5 inches across. You're also noticing there's some splitting here along the edge. You can see this happen when a mushroom ages in the garden, and this particular one appeared to be an older mushroom. It's been growing for some time, and you do see that splitting. Now, in the area that we harvested this mushroom, we had inoculated a couple of different varieties of mushrooms, and one of those was the oyster mushroom. We also inoculated some shiitakes. Now, the features of this particular mushroom would be consistent with the oyster mushroom. The decurrent gills going up onto the stem, and then also the forking features also of the gills. The size is also typical of a oyster mushroom, which can range in size from 2 to 10 inches across. And this one being an older mushroom, it's gotten quite large in size. So these are just some of the features of this particular mushroom that we harvested in our own garden. Well, we have our first mushroom from the garden, and this was just cut up, sliced, and we're going to be cooking this, sauteing it just lightly to place on a salad for lunch. So just a little bit of butter here to lubricate the pan so it doesn't stick. Just gonna get that to work here. Just let that melt a little bit. That melt a little more so that the whole bottom is coated. Mushrooms actually produce quite a bit of moisture when they cook, so you don't really have to worry about really having a lot of moisture in there, them drying out, because you can see they're pretty wet. This mushroom is just one mushroom from our garden. It's an oyster mushroom, and it was about 5 inches across. They do shrink quite a bit when you cook them. Some people like them cooked a little more than others, but I'm going to make sure that each side gets some time on the heat here. They make a really nice smell when you cook them. There's no mistaking the smell of mushrooms cooking. And that's also kind of my indication is when you start to really smell them cooking, that they're really limping. They're becoming more limp at this point. And this one's losing its form and falling apart. So I'd say these are almost done. And we've just been doing a couple minutes. Just going to see that middle part get a little bit more. But they're nice and soft. I like them when they get a little bit of brown on them. All right, this is nice and soft. So I'm feeling that we're going to be fine here. So I'm just going to move over on my plates and start taking them out. The smell is really delicious from these. Okay. So this thing can go all the way over. And this is just a simple salad. It has some lettuce in it, as well as some cucumbers, a little bit of red onion, tomatoes. It's got a few sprouts. It's got sunflower sprouts, as well as some broccoli sprouts. We're here in February, so it's nice to have these greens. And here's our mushrooms. And I'm going to be having a nice lunch shortly. Well, we've just harvested our first mushroom from the garden. It's an oyster mushroom, sliced up, sauteed, just took a couple of minutes, and it's ready to eat. So I'm going to go ahead and have our first taste here of our mushrooms. Extremely flavorful. And tender. Nothing like taking them right here. Often you see at the store, sometimes they're spotted, they've been in transit for who knows how long. Grow them right in your garden, cut them, wash them, make sure you know what you got, and saute them or however you want to prepare them. And it's just minutes till they're ready for the table. Highly recommend growing mushrooms in your backyard.